Let's talk about Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brien, which is book one in the Aubrey-Maturin series, named after the two main characters, Jack Aubrey of the Royal Navy and his surgeon, his ship's surgeon, Stephen Maturin. This is most famously by the name of, and one of the books that inspires the Russell Crowe Paul Bettany film Master and Commander Far Side of the World, which I think I read is based on four of the books, including this one and Far Side of the World, and then a couple of others. This is the first in the series, and it starts with two things are established to begin with. One is the friendship between the bluff, boisterous, somewhat old-fashioned Jack Aubrey of the Royal Navy and Stephen Maturin, an intellectual, scientific Irish man of science and medicine. And you get their friendship established very early on, and it's a special kind of friendship. It's one, but particularly there's a simpatico about classical music, which bridges very different personality types. It's also about Aubrey becoming master and commander of a ship, taking the rank of commander, in modern naval terms, of the HMS Sophie. And this is a small ship. You can see the kind of ship it is on the front there. It's a sailing ship. It's back in the Napoleonic Wars. In fact, this is the French Revolutionary Wars, technically, though I suppose by now it's 1800, so Napoleon is very high up. And he's given this brig or sloop, which is quite a small kind of warship of the time, rather than the big ones like HMS Victory or even USS Constitution. This is fairly small, and he's to go around raiding in the Western Mediterranean, doing convoy duty, but also raiding and trying to capture enemy cargo ships, French and Spanish cargo ships, so that to both help the king's cause, but also it's a way of getting rich, because the prize is sold off and you get a share, as well as the Royal Navy. And it's inspired throughout, I think, but particularly at this point, probably more than most, by the real-life exploits of Thomas Lord Cochran, later Admiral Cochran, who is a fascinating historical figure. If you haven't heard of him, you should go and check him out. There are some good biographies out there. But yes, he very famous marine raider and nicknamed by Napoleon the Wolf of the Seas. And Sophie is very closely based on the career of HMS Speedy, which was Cochran's first command. So there's a parallel there. Aubrey and Cochran are very different characters on the whole, but just some of the, much like Sharp, who actually have a Sharp book here, much like Sharp often steals, and Bernard Cornwell will say in the notes about it, will steal someone's historical exploit or explain some weird historical mystery, who killed Tipu Sultan or who took the first French eagle. So Aubrey borrows some of the great daring do of Cochran. Now, the action, that's one thing just to say, though, the action and the storytelling of the battles between ships and the things that Aubrey and his friends get up to is absolutely top class. Very, very good. As good as anything else in genre, historical fiction or action fiction. These were written from 1969 to O'Brien's death in the 2000s. So this is second half of the 20th century written. You do get a review here, by the way. The greatest historical novelist of all time, for what it's worth. So you have great action, but it's much more than that. And I think a comparison with Sharp actually is tutelary, because Sharp and Starbuck and... Have I read any Saxon books? I don't know if I have. Certainly I've read some of his Grail trilogy by Bernard Cornwell. I've read Stonehenge. His action is great. His storytelling is great. He's very solid at that. But they're not necessarily terribly deep books. They are action books. And I think an interesting thing about Master and Commander is there are a few layers to what's going on. There is this very strong storytelling and action area. There's some fascinating stuff about, he loves ships, does O'Brien. He loves the sailing ships. He's very good with the detail. There's some humour in this as well, because you sometimes being drowned in detail and you think, oh, is he not aware of this? And then I'm thinking actually Maturin, particularly when he's being introduced as a landlubber to ships, he sees all these details, he's seeing all the stuff, he doesn't really get it, he's being told lots of stuff he doesn't understand and nodding along. And you understand, you as a reader are somewhat meant to do the same. And there's something enjoyably Gene Wolfian in this, or there's some other good authors who do the same, just dumping you in. It's not exposition, though sometimes there is a bit of exposition about ships, though you're told it's exposition when it happens, but rather you're just dumped in and told, look, you can swim, it's fine. And that's interesting. That adds a lot to the historical detail, the sense he really does know his historical context. And finally, this is the most interesting thing that pushes this close to being actually literary, is the approach to character is layered and subtle and serious and indirect as well at times. And I think a degree of indirectness, a degree of gesture, and asking the reader to think about the character rather than saying the character thought this, is good. I think it's a useful artistic tool. And I think with this, Aubrey and Maturin are these diametric opposites. They are, in James Elroy terms, fire and ice. They are very, very different personalities. They gel in particular ways. They're also alien from each other in different ways and don't always get each other. And Aubrey particularly, who is, we get more of a perspective from in this book, is pretty even. You get lots of narrative from both. You get narrative from other characters too occasionally, particularly the lieutenant of the ship, James Dillon, who is a very important character who knows Maturin from before their time on the ship, and who has a compelling and challenging character arc. But yeah, Aubrey you get a bit more time with, I think, and he is, because he's a man of action and unapologetically masculine, if you like, in the old style, in a way that he doesn't always understand himself, but which, and people misunderstand as well, but which Maturin, I think, sees through, or sees into perhaps, and that's part of the basis of their friendship too. And Aubrey being this kind of complex, volcanic figure, titanic figure, who is not comprehensible completely to himself, despite being in many ways a simple man. There's enough going on there that you as the reader are asking questions. You see how other characters see him correctly or incorrectly. So yeah, I think this is a really masterful book. I enjoyed it a great deal, very compelling. Once I read 200 pages of it in one day. And I am going to read the second book, Post Captain, which I also own later in the year, unless that's very bad, and I think the reputation is it mostly just is very good, most of the series. I imagine I'll keep going on to HMS Surprise and the Mauritius Command and many others. And he does travel all over the place. He travels to India, and there's several associated with the War of 1812 as well. So several in America, far side of the world is there. But yes, that is my thoughts on Master and Commander. If you like action and historical fiction and good character work, I would read it if I were you. I think it should be high up your list on those ranks. Anyway, if you've read it, tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me your favourite historical fiction, and I'll see you next time.